This podcast is brought to you by The Shift.
Hello and welcome back to the Storytime Podcast for the first time in 2 years. I'm very excited.
It's story time.
So, first and foremost, hello. It's been a while. Yes, you can believe your ears. The Storytime Podcast is returning. If you are listening on Google Podcasts or Apple Podcasts, you might notice that it sounds a little bit different. If you are watching on YouTube, you might notice it looks a little bit different. And for that, I want to thank The Shift. No, not that kind of shift. We've teamed up with a new Irish podcast network called The Shift. So those of you that know Try Channel may know Blaheen. And this podcast network is the one her podcast is on. And that's how I weaseled my way in there. So her podcast is called I Don't Know Her. Shout out. And thank you so much, Blaheen, for providing the connection there. And thank you very much to The Shift who have taken on Storytime Season 2. Thank you to The Shift for believing in me that I can resurrect a podcast I haven't done in, over a year and a half maybe. And thank you to everyone who requested that the Storytime Podcast come back in the YouTube comments, tweeting at me, sending me emails. I really appreciate it because I didn't realize that there was a demand, and now I know. In particularly, I would like to thank everybody who has signed up to support the show on Patreon, in particular the Storytime Superhero tier patrons. Thank you so much. This would not be I would not be able to do this without you. In particular, there's a few upcoming episodes that will not be sponsor friendly, and those patrons on the Storytime Superhero tier are making those episodes possible. However, thank you to all of the patrons who have signed up at patreon.com/Clisare. If you enjoy my content as Clisare, or you enjoy the Storytime Podcast, please consider signing up to the support squad on Patreon. It's $1 a month, and every dollar really, really does help. I'm super excited about this upgrade we've got going on, and I hope that I can keep giving you the core content that you enjoyed from the start, but it just maybe looks and sounds a little bit nicer. Thanks to The Shift. So, about Storytime Podcast Season 2. First of all, it primarily is supported, as I said, by my patrons. There will be a number of ad reads. They're not sponsors as such. I'm going to ad read my affiliate codes. So I will get a little commission every time you use the Storytime affiliate codes. So that would be really great if you're not in a position to sign up to Patreon. If you wanted to sign up for a free Audible trial or a free Skillshare trial, and use the Storytime codes and links, which will be in the description of every YouTube video and in the show notes on the audio platforms, and I will read them out during the ad reads. So in terms of the content, I did speak to a lot of people about this. Ran a couple of polls, and people were saying that they wanted to see the same kind of content. They liked the stories, minimal editing. As you spotted, I have upgraded to a 2-camera setup, and I'm hoping that that's going to be manageable for me to just cut in between me and the guest. By virtue of that, the episodes will be slightly more edited, but for the most part, I'm going to stick to the same format of getting a guest on and letting them share their story. So what to expect in Season 2? First of all, I'm going to be sharing some stories I've never shared before. So for the very first time in my life, as a 32-year-old woman, YouTube is finally my job. Yay! But that means that I feel a little bit more comfortable sharing some stories I've never shared before. I also am going to share some stories that I have waited to share, that I have wanted to share for quite some time, but I couldn't, or felt that I couldn't, because there was ongoing issues around them. So secondly, I need guests. The Storytime Podcast is a place for other people to share their stories. I want to hear other people's life experiences and stories. So if you have an interesting story, if you know somebody that has an interesting story, please encourage them to reach out to me yourself. I will have a contact link in the description of every YouTube video, in the show notes on the audio platforms. And Also am on Twitter at Clisare, and the podcast is on Twitter at Storytime Pod. Those links will also be in the descriptions. You can tweet me, DM me. You can use the contact link. You can also go to clisare.com and there is a contact form on that page if that's easier to remember. But please reach out to me. Remote recording is also an option. There's no problem with that. Thanks to the Shift and the technology they have available, we can not shoot in studio if you don't want to come in for coronavirus safety, but we can also shoot internationally. So as long as you have access to a laptop and ideally a microphone, we are good to go. Even a USB microphone is perfect. And then we can record. So my international friends, my international viewers, if you have a story, share it with me. All you need to do is be able to tell it. It's that simple, I promise. So I'm really, really excited for the Storytime Podcast Season 2. I'm so happy that people want to hear it. It was really something that I absolutely loved doing, but it became too much for me at a certain point with my full-time job. But now the content creation is my full-time job. I can come back to doing this now. I'm super excited. Sorry, I just sound so good that I can't stop singing, which is ridiculous because I can't sing. So thanks to The Shift again. And thank you everyone who's continued to watch. This channel has remained monetized even though I haven't uploaded in a year, which is crazy. So there's still people watching it every day. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who requested that I come back. Thank you to the patrons. Follow the podcast on Google, Apple, everywhere you get your podcasts, or follow it here, subscribe here on YouTube. And I will see you in the next one.
This podcast was brought to you by The Shift. For more like this, check out theshift.ie.